Today I'm going to show you some quick hip tests, some assessments for your hips to figure out which mobility exercises you are going to benefit the most from, and then I'm going to show you the best mobilizations that you can be doing. What's up guys, Blake here, GuerrillaZen Fitness. So hip mobility issues are very common, and they can actually contribute to lower back issues because the pelvis is effectively the base of the spine. If you are missing certain ranges of motion in your hip joints, then not only can this contribute directly to hip issues, but to lower back issues as well by creating movement pattern compensations, okay? For example, if you're squatting and your hip is missing flexion, you might shift away from that side, okay? And start doing all sorts of things with your pelvis, rotating the pelvis, shifting it, and all of this kind of predisposes the lower back to injury. The first assessment that I'm going to teach you how to do is to assess your passive hip flexion. Hip flexion is when basically the hip angle is becoming smaller, all right? When your knee is coming up towards your chest, that's hip flexion, okay? You're doing this all the time when you're squatting down, okay? But also anytime you're sitting. Anytime you sit down or you squat down, your hip is going into flexion. And if you're missing that flexion capacity at the hip, that is bad news. All sorts of compensations can arise as a result of that, okay? When you are testing your hip flexion, a passive hip flexion test is pretty simple. You don't have to be super precise with this. You can just lay on your back, right? Grab the knee and pull it in towards the chest. We want to get somewhere approximately between 125 and 130 degrees of flexion here. If you kind of stop early and it feels like you're just obstructed and you can't pull your hip in any deeper than this, or you feel some sort of uncomfortable pinching in the hip, you're probably missing hip flexion, functional, comfortable hip flexion, okay? And that is not good. You should be able to pull that thing pretty deep in here, all right, and have this feel nice and fluid in the hip. If you stop early or it's uncomfortable pulling it in, then you are likely missing hip flexion. A great way to restore that hip flexion is just to put your body into deep hip flexion, okay? I forgot what this stretch is called, but basically what we're doing is we're just getting that hip to flex really deep. So put your foot out in front of you like this, get your other foot back, and what we're trying to do is maximize the amount of deep flexion that we're going into the joint with here, okay? So what I like to do is get in this position and then kind of scissor in and out of end range of motion like this. Keeping that spine straight the whole time. You don't want to go like this, okay? This is not doing anything for the hip. We're trying to make all that motion occur here at the hip, all right? Motion is lotion. So kind of sink down like this, all right? One thing that you can also do is reach back, grab your butt bone, okay, your ischial tuberosity, pull up on that thing, okay, as you kind of sink down low. That really kind of places a stretch on the upper hamstrings. As you kind of scissor in and out of this end range of motion here, it helps you restore and get deeper into hip flexion, okay? So with that, I would do, somewhere between 10 and 20 repetitions, scissoring in and out of that deep end range of motion. Another one of my favorites to help restore hip flexion is to lay on your back, tie, again, a resistance band into your groin as high up as you can, and let that band pull the femur better into the center of the joint socket as you kind of scissor in and out of deep hip flexion like this. This one feels amazing and can really help to produce instant results. The next assessment we're going to look at is your hip extension. This is very important if you want your glutes to actually fire, all right? If your hip is missing extension, you're not going to be able to really fire your gluteus maximus at all, or at least you're going to be largely reduced in your capacity to do so. And that also creates big problems posturally, okay? A way to test your hip extension is you lay down on your belly, okay? Keep that hip bone, you're gonna pick one leg, keep the hip bone on that side, press into the floor, and you're simply gonna just lift that leg straight back like this, okay? What you're looking for is anywhere between 0 and 20 degrees of extension, all right? If you are stopping early, okay, and your leg can't really get up that high, okay? Maybe it only comes up like a centimeter or so, like that, okay? That basically tells you that you're missing hip extension, okay? The greater the degree to which you are restricted in lifting that leg up is the greater the degree to which you are missing that hip extension, and you need to be working on this, okay? The key in really testing this though is to keep that right hip bone plugged into the ground. You don't want to twist off like this. This doesn't really tell you that much, okay? Keep that right ASIS, which is the pointy bone in the front of your hip, pressed into the floor, and just raise that leg straight back, okay? Do this on both sides. If you're gonna do the left side, obviously keep the left hip bone pressed into the ground. But, you know, the point of this is to show you how the degree to which you're restricted and the range of motion that you're restricted in. One of the easiest ways for you to start to restore your hip extension is just to do the classic kneeling hip flexor stretch with a little bit of glute priming, okay? And to do that, you're basically gonna get in this position right here, okay? Kind of tuck the pelvis underneath, like you're wearing a belt buckle and you're trying to tilt it up towards your face. Squeeze the glute on that side really hard and shift the hips forwards, right? We wanna get that hip into like full extension, all right? 20 degrees back. You might really feel this kind of peeling open the front of your hips, and that's what we want to be doing. Squeezing the glute on this side, pushing the hips forwards, and doing this anywhere between, 10 to 20 reps.
If you want to get even more of a kind of hip opening effect during this classic kneeling hamstring stretch, you can use a band in a similar way, this way. All right, so anchor the band out in front of you. Pull that band up as tight up in your groin as you can and rock back and forth into that end range of motion, squeezing the glute.
The last thing I'm going to show you how to assess is your hip rotation, your capacity to either rotate the femurs in towards one another or outwards away from one another, okay? And one of my favorite ways to kind of look at this is just to lay on your belly, okay? Just like this. And what you're going to do, if we're going to do this one leg at a time, kind of relax your upper body. Bend one knee until it's at about approximately 90 degrees, and then you're going to let that foot just go to the outside of the body. Okay, what we're looking for is about an equal spread this way, as we are equal spread this way and this way, okay? When the foot is going out like this, the femur is rotating in towards the midline, okay? So we're testing the internal rotation of your hip when you do this, okay? When you take that foot in, we're testing the outward rotation of the hip or the external rotation of the hip, okay? And what we want to see is approximately, an even spread back and forth here. If you find that you're stopping early when you're trying to go this way, and you can barely take that foot out, that indicates that you're likely missing internal rotation and you benefit from working on that. If you notice that your foot doesn't like to come in, and that kind of stops early, then you're likely missing external rotation, okay? And you need to be working on that. With regards to, the hip rotation, this is very, very important as well. A lot of people kind of overlook this. They focus a lot on the hip flexion and hip extension, but they do not pay attention to how well their hips rotate. And that's a big problem because, for example, if you're missing internal rotation capacity of the hips, that's going to affect your glutes, and you're not really going to be able to affect your, fire your glutes very well, especially during a motion like a squat, okay? So it's important for you to assess your range of motion with regards to rotation. The easiest way to do this is to, record yourself doing it, just like from the exact perspective that I'm recording this video now, and check this footage out on yourself, okay? You might find that one hip is just missing internal rotation, whereas the other one's fine. And that kind of gives you clues that you should be mobilizing that one hip that is restricted, okay? For all intents and purposes, again, what we're looking for here, we want to be able to kind of move this leg about, 30 to 45 degrees this way, and this is internally rotating the femur, all right, or testing your capacity to do so. You also want to take it inwards to, approximately the same, okay? It should look like a windshield wiper blade, an even spread, okay, like this. If you're more sticky on one side than you are the other side, that means you need to work on that rotation. And again, remember, when the foot's going out, the femur is actually rotating in towards the midline. So when you're laying on your belly, letting your foot go out, you're testing your internal rotation. When the foot's coming in, you're testing your external rotation. A lot of people get confused about that because of where the foot is moving, but we are not paying attention to the foot as much as we are paying attention to the femur, the leg bone, and how it's rotating in the joint socket.
One of my favorite internal rotation mobilizations for the hips is a banded distraction like this. Tie a band around something really stable, put that band as far up in your groin as you can, and then scissor the leg in and out of internal rotation like this, using the arm to kind of help that leg internally rotate. So to work on that external rotation, we're going to do something similar that we've been doing with all these mobilizations. Get a band, anchor it off to something off to the side, pull that band up and deep into the groin, and then basically scissor that leg in and out of external rotation. It's okay to kind of roll up on the outside of the foot as you do this. Try to go progressively deeper and deeper every rep.
I really quickly want to touch on some things with regards to the hip rotation. You could have something called a congenital hip variance that is affecting your range of motion in the hip. That's a whole nother can for another or a whole nother can of worms for another discussion. I think I made a video on this a while ago. If not, I'll post my friend's video that made, that's really good about this in the description down below. As a concluding remark to this video, it's always important to utilize the range of motion that you are able to unlock after doing joint mobilizations so that you can teach your neuromuscular system how to use that new range of motion, okay? That's how you make it functional range of motion. So with any of these, hip mobilizations that I showed you here today, one thing that you'd benefit from enormously is doing some sort of exercise, some sort of strengthening exercise or integration exercise after you do these. Body weight squats, hip thrusters, even walking is going to be beneficial in terms of teaching your neuromuscular system, your muscles, how to fire the joint within that new range of motion so that you can keep that range of motion and make it functional. So just keep that in mind. That's very important. You want to be doing some sort of movement or exercise that gets your muscles to contract and turn on after you're done doing these mobilizations. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, then you're going to love my free workout called the 3-Day Functional Training Split. This is a functional training plan that integrates corrective exercises for posture, mobility issues, flexibility issues into strength training that you do over 3 days, okay? This plan is available for free on my website. All you need to do is open up the description down below, click the first link available there. That will take you over to my website, and as soon as you get there, I'll ask you for your email. Once you enter that in, I'll send you a copy of that workout within 5 minutes. If you're looking for another spot to get that free workout, you can go ahead and click this button up there. That'll take you to the same page on my website. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you go ahead and do that over here. Give the video a like if you found this useful today. That really helps me out. Comment below. Let me know what you want me to make videos on in the future. And if you want to see another video similar to this one, check this out over here. And that's it for today. As always, I'll see you next time.